In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to achieve your required score. So there are some students who will be answering the OET exams, or they have answered the exams and they have not got their scores. So there is one level where that is the score that you need, and the other is the score that is your required score. So I'm going to take you step by step how to achieve your overall score. Like I said, that OET you are numerically marked from 0 to 500 and you're given a grade of A to E. So how to achieve B or an A in OET? First, I'm going to talk about writing. So in writing, if you need to achieve a high score or a B, you need to be very careful in keeping in mind who you are writing to and why you are writing. Pick out, select the relevant case notes. Organize the case notes in a manner which makes it easy for your reader to find out information about your patient. Have a very polite tone in your letter, and also every information that you provide to your reader, the important information should be highlighted first. And if you're giving information as, say, medical history, or if you're giving the reader pertaining to, say, family history, everything needs to be clear in separate paragraphs. Do not include two things in a single paragraph. Now we come to speaking. In speaking, if you want to achieve a high score, you need to speak very naturally, keeping in mind the patient. As you would speak in your hospital environment, in that manner, you need to speak to your patient, you need to speak to the interlocutor, asking questions, relating to the patient. Put yourself in the patient's shoes. How would you like to be spoken to? If the patient is reluctant, as a healthcare professional, how would you handle the patient? If it's an emergency case, how would you handle the emergency patient? So be very natural. It is your work-related area. It is your work domain. You need to speak as you speak in your hospital environment to any patient. So it is real life situation. It is an exam, but don't think of it as an exam per se. Think of it that you are speaking to the interlocutor who is your patient. Now we come to reading. So in reading, the only tip that I can give you is that in part A, skim and scan, understand what are the extracts talking about. Part B, since it's going to be a memo or an email, put yourself, since you're in healthcare profession, you are in the hospital. For example, you're in the hospital, there is an email that has been sent to you. Are you going to read the entire email, or will you be selecting the important content of that email which pertains to you? The same goes with the memo. You need to understand what the memo or the email is talking about, what it relates to. In your part C, you might not come across part C because in your work related area, but when you go back home, every health profession every health professional in fact, goes through books, listens to podcasts, and keeps themselves up to date regarding the medical field. Now, this is where Part C comes into play. Because, like I said, Part C is two lengthy extracts pertaining to an interview, or it might be a research. So when you are reading a book on a research by a medical professional, what do? You find that the writer has his or her own opinion, has an attitude, might have certain questions, might have certain meanings. So when you are reading Part C, you need to keep in mind and focus what is the opinion and the attitude of the writer. That is something which will help you in your Part C. Now we come to listening. The only tip that I can tell you about listening is, especially in your Part A, because it's a consultation and it is work related. So when you are listening to your patient, you take down notes. You know at once that if the patient is talking about symptoms, about gastric, or say a myocardial infarction, you as a healthcare professional, you know at once what symptoms is the patient going to talk about. What is the current symptoms the patient is going to talk about? So you analyze that conversation. In the same manner, you have to analyze in Part A, analyze and think, what next is the patient going to tell me? After that, it might be medical history. Your Part A listening has bullet points which are highlighted. Please pay attention to the bullet points as well as the highlights, because that will ensure, or that will show you, or that will lead you to where the conversation is. So if it's the current symptom, the patient might describe what is his problem. If it's a medical history, the patient will give you information about medical. If it's an investigation, you as a nurse or a doctor, you know at once what are the investigations possible, if it's related to myocardial infarction or whether it's related to any other disease. Sometimes the patient also describes their symptom. Now, he might use a word like an adjective or a phrase. That is something which, when you hear in Part A, you need to write it down without making any changes. So if the patient says that my pain is like a rocket, you need to write down. The question might say the pain of the patient is, so you need to write down rocket, or whatever description the patient gives you, that is what you need to write in your Part A. In your Part B, since it's pertaining to handovers, briefings, again, since it's work related, what will you do if your colleague gives you a handover? You're going to make points and the focus of the handover. What is it that your colleague wants you to do after she gives you the briefing and the handover and she goes back home? So you need to focus on what care you need to provide for that patient after your colleague leaves. So this is a very important tip. Try and understand what is the purpose of your listening Part B. Now we come to listening Part C. Your listening Part C is an interview or a presentation. the only tip that I can provide you is that your listening part C is sequential, and if it's an interview, the interviewer will be asking you all the questions, and that will help you to transition from one question to the other, and you will get an idea where the conversation is. For a presentation, the person who is talking about the research will guide you, will give you keywords in the question that will lead you to your answer, or will help you to understand where the conversation is. So that helps you to transition again from one question to the other. Sometimes the presenter might pause for a moment. That is another hint that she is going to be talking about the next question. So listening part C, you need to be very careful, listen, understand what the presenter is saying or what the interviewer is asking you. Understand the question to get to your answers. Another significant method for you to get a high score in OET is, along with practice material and practicing samples from the net or from books, you need to analyze your weakness. In which part of the subtext you are having a difficulty. Once you analyze that difficulty, work on your weakness. It can be that you have a weakness in part A of your reading because it's 15 minutes. Practice your part A so that you're able to complete it within 13 minutes. You might have a problem in speaking. Try to overcome your weakness in speaking by talking to your colleagues, talking to your friends in English. So that will boost your confidence in speaking. In listening, there are a lot of students who have difficulties in understanding the pronunciation or the accent. Listen to podcasts, listen to live shows, listen to BBC Heart Talk, listen to other talk shows wherein that will help you to overcome the difficulty in understanding the pronunciation as well as the accent. So the main thing is, no matter how many samples or practice tests you do, the first important thing is to analyze your weakness in each of the subtext. Work on it. The only thing that will get you a good score is practice and plenty of hard work.